Hello everyone, welcome to another week here at the Confidence Connection Show, where we talk to people from all around the world with all different backgrounds, sharing their stories of confidence and how they can empower you to be confident too. So this week I'm joined by the lovely Foxxy, all the way from Australia, and hopefully we have Sherri joining us as well, but she seems to be running a bit late, but hopefully she joins us. But in the meantime, we are here to talk to Foxxy. So Foxxy Eleoyze is a mother of three, an ex-professional exotic dancer and a successful producer of theatrical burlesque shows, and a creator of the 9 archetypes of your inner power, which sounds very interesting. She's an intuitive facilitator, a master results coach, NLP and hypnosis trainer, energy healer, artistic creator, speaker, and soon to be author. So she's got a great background. She's used her expertise of energy healing, coaching, and artistic expression to develop her online programs and retreats for women. She grew up with a mother who was manic depressed, along with being indoctrinated in a cult-like religion. She battled with depression and low self-esteem to now building a successful business in her own right. Her entrepreneurial journey took her from quitting her job of 17 years and endeavored to launch her own business in 2016. She got a bit sidetracked in helping her new husband develop his relationship counseling business, but has recently returned to her path and passion of empowering women to take 100% responsibility for their own personal development. She's an adventurepreneur, I love that word, who loves being in nature, camping, dancing, running, and mountain bike riding in her downtime. So what an interesting person with such a broad background. So welcome, Foxxy. Thank you so much for being here. Do you want to tell everyone just a little bit more about yourself and your background and, yeah, how you got to be where you are today?
Oh, well, thank you, Bronte, for having me here. I really appreciate the opportunity. Just a little bit about me and my background. I guess there's a part of me that's always wanted to express myself through my body. I remember being 5 years old, dancing around to my mother playing the piano, and just wanting to be free and just, express myself and just being beautiful and being like a fairy. And I think that's been a real theme throughout my life. So what was the next question?
Just your background and kind of how you got to be where you are today.
Okay, so how I got to be where I am today is based from that part of myself, just wanting to express myself. And just very quickly, because of the religious beliefs that I held from about the age of about 11 right through to like my early 30s, it held me back from expressing myself. And I remember going into a club at 19 years old. You know how you have the go-go dancers, the little crop tops and little short pants. And I wanted to be one of those, but I realized they didn't wear enough clothes. So because of my religious beliefs, I thought, well, I can't do that. And so that just kept me held back. And it wasn't until the church disintegrated in their belief systems and my whole world was chopped down at the roots that opened the door for me to possibly entertain, who am I? Whom I want to express myself. And the opportunity, I saw an ad in the paper for an exotic dancer. So I went and got a job where you got no clothes on, like.
So one extreme to the other.
Yeah, well, as I said, it was always there, but it was just suppressed because of my belief system. Yeah. So, and along the way, when I worked, like I was there for 17 years, so I saw the progression. When I first started, there was very few women come into the club, but over the years, more and more women would come into the club until eventually, it was almost like a third of the patrons were women. And they would say to me, I wish I had the confidence you have. And I'm going, this is, what confidence? It was just something that kind of came naturally. And I'll backtrack that a bit later when I say confidence coming naturally, because it didn't. But it appeared to. And it was from there that women, I saw a need of women wanting to express themselves, but they didn't know how. For me, it came naturally because of that sexy kind of inside wanted to ooze out and be sensual and all of that. And that's what they saw and that's what they wanted. And I thought, it's kind of like anyone that with a genius, it's they kind of downplay it and go, everyone can do that. But going to backtrack on that. when I was little, and all through my life, like shy as introvert. Take me to a party, I'm the one in the corner. Definitely not out there.
Yeah.
And just like when I first started dancing, I did not have the confidence. I was petrified. I would have diarrhea before I started every shift. And it was just, oh my God, I'm choking up now. Wow.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, so just I'm going back to that time, like, oh my goodness, I was so scared to just walk up and talk to someone.
Yeah.
I would literally have to go in my mind. The only way I could break through that was if I could just put one step in front of the other and get my body to walk over to that person, then I'm sure something will happen. Because I had no idea what to say, no idea what to do. And seriously, it was petrifying for me. But there was also a part of me that always wanted to push through those boundaries, push through those places inside of me that I was scared to talk to people and very shy, extremely shy. So I guess, part of that journey is just putting myself in a place where I had to talk to people.
Yeah.
And I had to put myself out there.
Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah. And it's just that practice of doing that, taking that one step in front of the other and just being gentle on yourself.
I see Sherri's joined us, so welcome, Sherri. We'll talk to you soon after we've heard from Foxxy. So next question is, so you've talked a little bit about this, but go a bit deeper on how did your childhood affect your confidence, how you were raised by your mother and then your father and the religion and stuff, and what would you say to people who think that confidence is just something that you're born with, people that don't know that you can actually develop confidence?
Well, confidence was definitely something I wasn't born with. As I said, I was shy as. I remember my mother invited a friend that I had. I was very young, like only about 3 or 4 or something. And I remember hiding me underneath my mother's skirt. Like, I was just petrified. Just, I would hide behind people literally all through my school years. I would have 1 or 2 friends and I would literally be their shadow. And just, they'd do all the talking and I'd just sort of stand in the background. I was kind of like the wallflower. So it just, and I think, I'm not sure why I was like that. My mother was manic depressive. So she was very overbearing and very controlling. So I did everything I possibly could to placate that. And the best way I could do that was just to be the good girl and do as I was told. And just abide by the rules and I wouldn't get into trouble. So, and I spent my life overcoming that, of being the rule keeper to the one that breaks the rules now. In fact, I remember one time I was, in the club working as a dancer, and it just, for me to get in trouble was just, just a no-go zone. Like so many other girls would get into trouble, they just say what they think and whatever that. And I remember having this argument with this girl, and I got hauled over the coals by management because I stood up for myself for a little bit with this girl, and of course she told on me. And I was actually proud of myself that I got into trouble. I go, yes, I'm in trouble. Because I saw the other girls, just sticking up for themselves, and I'm going, wish I could do that. So it was empowering just to be able to start speaking up more and more. Verbally. So in a sense, I guess what probably came easier for me is to express myself through my body, but when it came to verbal things, I struggled big time with.
So what would you say, what's something that you know now that you wish you knew when you were younger, say in your 20s?
Stop getting hung up by what other people tell you should and shouldn't do. So for example, if I'd known what I know now back then, I would have become a go-go dancer. Instead of having this belief system or this story going through my head, that was wrong, that was sinful, you're going to the lake of fire, you're going to die, like all this stuff that I was holding on to. And yet my inner being was saying, but I want to, that's what I want to do. And I wouldn't have shut that voice down back then.
And so, that was all from when you were religious and part of that church, cult-like church. So when that church disintegrated in your 30s, sort of what revelations did you have? Like, what wake-up calls about life did you have when that community fell apart? That was so significant.
Well, it was a big significant event, because my whole world was chopped down at the trunk, and I'm going, well, if I believed in this and now it's not true, what is true?
Yeah.
And then I just started questioning everything. I remember my husband at the time, like, he went to the library and he got every book he could possibly imagine on UFOs, on out-of-body experiences, everything. And he started reading all these things and started reading it to me. And I would go, I don't want to hear this. This just does not fit into my paradigm. This is not true. But the thing is, he kept doing it, and I'm going, well, hang on a minute, maybe there is something, maybe I need to open my mind more. So I think once again, it's just that opening new possibilities and not keeping in such a narrow focus. So I think that's the big thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're an exotic dancer for 17 years. So, you've talked about it a bit, but just go a bit more on how you gained the confidence to do that, to actually sign yourself up to be working in that space. And how did you go about, telling your family and friends and that whole, part of your world that wouldn't accept something like that?
Well, it was really weird, because even though I had this idea that I was want to be an exotic dancer, I was married at the time, and I said, what do you think? And he goes, I think it'd be a great idea, to my husband. And he's the one, he actually came to the interview, and he came in with me, and he told the manager of the club, he said that I'd be really good at this job. He sold me. I mean, I just sat there. I was so shy and petrified. And he goes, no. And yeah, he sold me. And I remember walking out of the office back into the club area, and there was a woman on stage, and she was virtually naked. And I go, oh my goodness. I was just shocked. I'd never been in a strip club before. And I'm going, wow. And yet, I did that job. Like, I had to recalibrate how I lived, I mean, I had grooming to do, high heels to buy, makeup to buy. I mean, I was, almost like a country girl. Like, I did that stuff. It was kind of weird. Like, I had a big identity shift, I guess, in a sense, to step into this role, this new part of me that wanted to express myself but had been shut down. So I remember at the beginning, I would constantly just ask the other girls, what do I do here? How do I do this? And I remember having conversations, like, for literally 3 months when I first started, was just me asking questions like, what do I do here? How do I do this? And just asking for others, what did they do? And watching other people. And just copying.
And do you think, if it wasn't for your husband, like, was that the sort of dancing you were wanting to sign up for? Or do you think he kind of chucked you right on the deep end, and you might have started somewhere a bit more safer to begin with?
I don't think there is any safer strip club.
Dancing somewhere else, like with more clothes on, or was that like you did what you wanted to do, or do you think that?
No, I would have done it still. I would have still done it, but he made it easier. Having that journey. I mean, I would have still gone there, even though I would have been petrified and sweating and having like jitters before I go there. I would have still pushed through that because there was a part of me going, I don't want to be this shy, shut down person. And I want to express myself more. It was always there, and it was so layered down by, belief systems, parents, upbringing, that good girls don't do things like that. I remember I was teenager, I must have been about 18, and my mother saying, oh, I don't know how the conversation came up, but she says, oh, but you wouldn't go out there and just get naked. And I was 18 at the time, and I'm going, she doesn't know me. I remember thinking then, she doesn't know me. I didn't say anything. So it was always there. It was always this desire, but it was so just shut down by other people's belief systems that I took on.
Yeah. And how did she take that when you did go finally live out your dreams?
Well, the thing is, I was living in Australia at the time, and my parents moved back to New Zealand.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a lot of contact with them, and I never talked to them. This whole 17 years I worked as a dancer, I never ever spoke to them about my job. And the only reason I knew that they knew is because I talked to my half sister, and she would have told them. And so, but the thing is, I think about 6 months after I started, I told my birth mother. She was living in Melbourne, and she disowned me for about 6 months. And then she realized, well, you know, I still come and visit her. I still love her. Like, I'm still human. I'm still her daughter. So she kind of got over it. But every time she'd see me, she says, oh, I don't like that job you're doing. I think it's terrible. You know, and I'm just going, whatever.
A lot of people might experience that, you know, having that really must knock your confidence when, you know, your family don't support what you're doing. So how do you get past that and keep your confidence high when, you know, your loved ones don't support what you're doing?
I think it's an individual basis. Sometimes if the family are so pervasive and you're unable to stand up for yourself, don't tell them. Like, there's so many girls in the club that didn't tell their parents or didn't tell anyone in their family. Sometimes you've just got to keep yourself safe, and that's okay. So don't push yourself and make life miserable for yourself. I only do as far as you can go, because you're just making life hard. And ideally, what you really want to do is, and I've learned this since then, is to work on how you're feeling. So for me, it took me a long time to realize, well, until I change how I feel about things, then I'm never going to be able to set those boundaries, or never going to be able to speak up to other people and be strong in who I am.
Yeah.
If I haven't worked through my own hang-ups and my own feelings and my own thoughts that what I'm doing wrong and what I'm doing is bad and I'm no good and I'm not worthy and all those things that go through your head, and then and it wasn't until I actually started working through a lot more of those, and it took me a long time to work through the shame, the guilt, you know, from all my conditioning throughout those years. And just, it was a slow process. I mean, there are processes now that can actually work, and I do that now with the women I work with. Is the process is really get down into the unconscious part of you and shift that identity and how you feel. And it wasn't until I started doing that that things started to shift, and I could start speaking up a whole lot more than I could in the early days.
That's great. Which leads us into our last question. So, you know, you are a coach now and a healer. So tell us a bit more about that and what you do for people and how your past experiences have helped you with what you're doing now.
So what I do with people now is I take them on a journey into what is already there inside and unpeel those layers of conditioning off them and help them find that juiciness, find that real aliveness to express themselves. And I do that through workshops and programs and retreats, and I have various processes that I take people through. And it's very powerful, because the big thing is, I believe every woman needs to be able to move her body, because there's so much wisdom in our body and so much locked in there. And when we move our bodies in certain ways, it brings up certain feelings that we've shut down. And it's not until we embrace both sides of ourselves, you know, for me to embrace that bad girl of myself, it was when I embraced that bad girl of myself that I found my power and go, wow, there's something in here. Yeah.
That's so cool. That's great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. We're going to send you backstage and talk to Sherri now, and then I'll bring you back on the end to talk more about confidence. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thanks. Thank you, Bronte.
Hello, Sherri.
Hi there.
Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
So I'll just introduce Sherri a bit. So seeing the world has always been important to her, from babysitting in high school to earning enough money to take a trip to Mexico to exploring the world by motorcycle solo. Sherri Jo once owned a Harley in the US in her 20s, but she then moved to Australia when she was invited to help make adventure documentaries for the Travel Channel in the US in her 30s. So she's acted as a navigator and co-pilot in a light aircraft, big adventure, done lots, sailed the maiden voyage of a yacht dodging pirates through the islands of the Pacific. She swam humpback whales every day for a month in Tonga in her 40s. The last great adventure was to ride around the world on a motorcycle, which included the infamous Road of Bones in Russia without any off-roading riding experience. She's received an unofficial female world record for riding a motorcycle to the highest elevation at 5,903 meters in Chile. Like, it's crazy. She's managed to ride the motorcycle through the Amazon jungle and come out the other side alive. She's now in her 50s, and her next adventure is tackling Australia in a four-wheel drive motorhome with a blue heeler puppy in tow. So let's go along for the ride. Thank you so much for joining us. What an adventurous life. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background and how you got to be so adventurous?
It sounds weird to hear somebody talk about me, but yeah, I don't love talking about myself, but I have, I'm born in America, and I lived with my family and worked with my family up until my early 30s. And it was a family business. So I did everything in the business, from working in the warehouse to running the office to running the whole show. And I had those thoughts, like, is this all there is to life? Working and going home, and it just was never good enough for me. So I always loved to travel, and in America it's a little bit different to Australia. Holidays were 1 week per year, so for most of my life in America I had 1 week off to travel per year, and I couldn't see hardly anything in that 1 week. So eventually grew to 2 weeks, and then what you just introduced, I was able to meet somebody who invited me to Australia, and then I learned in Australia you have 4 weeks holidays. That makes far more sense. So, but even that wasn't good enough. Even that, I was just like, you'd go away for 2 or 3 weeks and like, but I didn't see this place and that place, it was still not good enough. So so I'll tell you who inspired me. This was many years ago, but there was a young Australian girl, 16 years old, who sailed around the world solo. And I was so inspired by that young, like 16 years old, and she's done the whole world by herself in a boat. So that's where my brain went, like, look, I can't just work and pull weeds in the garden on the weekends. I have to go out and see the world. And I went into, I couldn't make a decision. And I went home one day and I shut the drapes in my living room and I sat on the couch. You're not getting off this couch until you make a decision. And this idea for riding a motorcycle around the world just came into my brain. It was not on my radar. And I just went, like, I argued with myself for quite a while about that, but then I was like, decided just to learn a little bit about it. So, and that's how that whole idea was born. Yeah.
That's so cool. And I can totally relate. I'm in New Zealand, so I'm the same. When I was working a standard job, I had the 4 weeks, and I was like, is that it? When I talk to people in America, they're like, you get 4 weeks? And I was like, we only get 4 weeks? But working for myself now, it's great. You just take your rest as you need it. And
that's right.
So you went around the world, as we know. So how long did that whole trip take, and how many countries did you visit, and what was your favorite place or part from that whole tour?
I had planned on doing it for 18 months. And while I was out there in the world, I found like I was treating it like a job, because even though I come from a family business, we're a hardworking family business, and it was 6 days a week, and early in the morning, late at night, and so that's just inbred in me. I get up at 4. I still get up at 4, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. It's just inbred in me. So I was treating this trip around the world like a job. Like I was packed and ready to go well before 8 a.m. I knew exactly where I was going, when I was going to stop for lunch, all these things, work. And then I realized some countries are small and you can actually get from one side to the other in one day and not actually experience the country. So I decided to slow it down a bit in a few places. And that turned out being 3.5 years I was away. I planned 18 months, but 3.5 years was what it turned out to be. Yeah. How many countries I visited was 48 on that trip. And it's really, really hard to pick a favorite. Like every country is amazing in their own way. And my thing is not motorcycling, just to be clear. Like I'm not avid motorcyclist. My thing is travel. And that was the mode of travel I picked. I didn't want to sail. I was inspired by Jessica Watson and her sailing, but I am not interested in sailing. And how else can you go around the world? Well, you can backpack, but that was a little bit boring for me. So I found a motorcycle. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so cool. I totally know what you mean about picking. Every time I go on a trip, everyone's like, where's your favorite place? Like, lots of more for different reasons.
Yeah. Well, we do talk about, and I know a couple of your questions are about Russia, but quite often if I get pushed into it, I will say Russia. And the reason why I'd like to pick Russia as one of my top favorites is because when I was in the northern part of Siberia, I went to villages that had never seen a foreigner ever. Had never seen a foreigner. And that's really hard to find in the world today, even in the most remote locations. And when I would drive in and stop at a little cafe to get a cup of tea or whatever, the people would come out and surround me and touch me and take photos. And some of the children actually cried because I was different. They were scared of me. And that's just very, very rare in the world these days. So that I have to put that as a favorite. Not only was the landscape and, the terrain and the culture amazing, but just to be in that type of part of the world. Yeah.
I don't know, both for them and for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you made the journey when you wanted to make a major life change. So why did you feel the need to make a big life change? And you've talked a bit about it, but you said that moment on the couch was like divine inspiration. So just touch a bit more on that.
Sure. I was in my 40s then, and I loved my house. I loved my car. I love where I live in Australia. It's a real blessing to live in this country, and especially where I live. And so it was not a complaint, but I, like anybody, I just want more. And, and so I thought, are you just going to work and pull weeds in the garden and die, or are you going to do more? So I was actually looking for a business. I thought I'll start looking for a business and try to grow something myself. And or that travel thing just kept being in the background saying, well, if you do a business, you'll be trapped. You'll never get to travel again because you'll be trapped. And I think that's how that got separated. So that, and that idea, it was, to me, it was divine inspiration, because I was not even thinking about motorcycles at all. And for me to come out of that, you need to make a decision about business or travel, and come out of that with a motorcycle in my head, it was not me. Yeah.
That's so interesting. And then just a bonus question, I guess there'd be people listening who might want to travel the world like you did, and 3.5 years is such a long time. So how did you fund that journey? Did you have income of some sort while you were on that trip? Because I'm sure there's lots of people that would like to know how to fund a trip like that.
Yeah. As I said, I've always worked hard. So I paid off my house a few years before I actually took the trip. So I did have tenants in my house, and that was income. The costs aren't huge when you live on the road. Fuel and camping, hostels are like $5 if you want to actually not camp. Camping's usually free. I was invited into so many people's houses. So, cost was not big out on the road. So I didn't spend a lot. And then I always have to add there that I've never had a child. And so I know that they're very expensive. So selfishly, I'm spending probably what money I would have on a child on myself. So
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I think it's just good for people to know, because so many people are like, well, how do you do that? How do you make it happen? But I guess where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you say that ignorance played a part in your journey. So do you believe ignorance is part of the road to confidence? And tell us about, conquering that road of bones with confidence.
Yeah, well, confidence is, I don't know, confidence came along. Confidence didn't start, confidence came along. Yeah. So when I was traveling in Russia I'll give you a little synopsis of the story. When I was planning my trip around the world, I got in contact with a few people just asking questions, because I didn't know what motorcycle to take, what gear to pack, all of these things. And so my big thing was research. I love research. Yeah. And I met a person who said, hey, what's your route? And I told him my approximate route. And he said, look, you're going to be in Russia the same time we are. So would you like to join us? And I'm like, okay, that would, just be nice to meet people on the road who do what I'm doing. So I agreed to it. And this man had invited 5 people who paid him to guide him through this big part of Russia called the Road of Bones. And I had never researched the Road of Bones itself. I just had done some Russia, and it turns out this is like a pinnacle for motorcycle adventurers. Like, this is a road that was built many years ago as part of the Gulag system. And if you're familiar with gulags, the prisoners of war were all they were, the story is, the legend is that the professors and doctors, everybody was taken from their homes to be prisoners of war. They had to build these roads and then create these gulags. And a lot of people died because of the environment, not having proper warm clothes or food. And so they died, and the landscape up there is permafrost. So you can't actually dig graves because it's permafrost. So the legend is they laid them in the road as they were building the road. And that's why it's called the Road of Bones.
Oh, right. I did not know that.
It's a pretty heavy story, when you hear it. And so the man that invited me to go through Russia, he had 5 people were paying him to guide them down this Road of Bones, and because he had done it before. And when I met them, they had all canceled. All 5 of them had canceled. Only the guide, whose name was Walter, was there. And I was like, and the light bulb went off, like, oh my God, what have I signed up for here? I'm the only stupid one, and ignorance is bliss. When you go back to that beginning part of your question, it is all about ignorance. And he said, don't worry about it, I'll show you how to do it. And so I just ignorantly said, okay. And I wasn't as sure what I was getting into, as I said. So once we were on the Road of Bones, I had the first day, I had like 18 water crossings, and I had, as I said, I hadn't ridden off-road before. So I was keeping my motorcycle only on bitumen. Even when I had to go to the side of the road to let somebody pass, I didn't want to touch the little rubble on the side of the road. I was so afraid I was going to fall over. So on day 1, I was driving through dirt, mud, water crossings. So it was my biggest learning experience. But where I want to take it just a little bit farther, as far as that ignorance goes, he's a very detail-oriented person. He knew every step of the way because he'd done it before. And he would say, tomorrow we're going to be meeting Half Bridge. Well, what's Half Bridge? Well, Half Bridge is this bridge in Russia where they only built half of the bridge, and then it goes down into the water and you go the rest of the way across, but it's shallow, blah, blah. And I'm just like, well, in my head, I was spinning like, I'm going to fall off Half Bridge. I'm going to fall off. I know I'm going to fall off Half Bridge. It's metal. The bridges there were floating on the water because of the, melting, snows and ice and everything. So this bridge actually went up and down floating. And when you get to the end of the bridge, there's this metal ramp that goes down into the rest of the river and you go across. And it's like, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to fall. I'm going to lose everything. Everything's going to go underwater. The motorcycles, all the stuff goes in your head. And when we got to Half Bridge, it just turned out that it was a dry season, and we'd gone over Half Bridge and gone down, and the river was dry. So I actually just rode across, rubbly stuff on the bottom, no water at all. And I wasn't even sure that we did it, because when we stopped for a break later down, I said, did we go over Half Bridge already? Oh, yeah, I went over Half Bridge, 20 Ks back. So if you had not told me we were going over Half Bridge, I wouldn't have had to spend the entire day worrying. So I told him from then on, I said, do not tell me what's coming. I would rather be ignorant about it and just tackle each step as it comes, but not create the story in your head of how you're going to die, how you're going to fail. So, yeah.
That's so true. We build such big stories in our head for no reason. Most of the stories that we play in our head don't even come true.
Correct.
So what would you say to someone listening who wants to make a similar adventure or something, something equally as great as what you did? Not sure how to go about it or how to start.
Yeah, well, I live by baby steps. So one thing I knew, and just because of some other self or development classes maybe I'd taken in the past, was that baby steps are the key. So when you have an idea, the overwhelming part of the idea is, how am I going to achieve that? How am I going to do that? And you just don't know, because you don't know. You've never done it before. How would you know? So the key to getting towards that goal are baby steps. And so anybody who would ask me about doing something similar, I would say, first step, Google it. Second step, go to, if it's about motorcycling, go to a motorcycle shop, sit on one, touch one, take a test drive. What does it feel like to you? Does it get your juices flowing, if that's what you wanted, the terms that, like you mentioned earlier, does it excite you? And when I did exactly that, and I knew about the baby steps, I just said, look, I'm just going to go to a motorcycle shop. I'm going to go look at a couple of motorcycles and come home and then think about it more after that. And that's what I did. And I took out a BMW for a test drive, and the guy said, oh, you don't want to do that. And he was trying to discourage me about my idea. And I was like, oh, can I just test it? And so I took it out for a test drive, and I came into an intersection. I couldn't get it into first gear. And it was a big intersection in Adelaide, one of the biggest ones, right? So there's cars all around going every which way, and there's a huge line behind me, and the light turns green, and I couldn't get in the first gear. I was kicking it down, and I took off into second gear, which is a little bit putty. It was like a little bit putty. And then so while I was in that turn like that, I tried to kick it down into first gear again, and I fell right over. and a man jumped out of his car and helped me roll the motorcycle off to the corner so that the rest of the people could pass. And I had to drive it back to the motorcycle shop with damage.
Oh, no.
And I tore off the turn signal and a big scrape on the side of the fuel tank. And the manager was really, really nice, because he had been a little bit of a ding dong earlier, but he was really, really nice. And he looked up in the air, and he looked down at the ground, and he said, well, the world hasn't fallen in, and that's what insurance is for. So don't worry about it. I'm like, oh. But at the end of the day, I was still excited about getting on a motorcycle, right? I was still, even though I fell over, you fall over a lot if you ride on two wheels. So, it wasn't enough to tell me this is a bad idea. I was still excited to go further. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all about enjoying the journey.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. We'll bring Foxxy back on and talk some more about confidence. So welcome back, Foxxy. So I'll ask you the questions first, and then Sherri can answer afterwards. So Foxxy, what does confidence mean to you?
Confidence means to me feeling the fear and doing it. It's it's taking that next step, like from just taking that baby step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sherri, what does confidence mean to you?
Confidence to me is having the belief in yourself, the strength in yourself to take the next step. Yeah.
Certainly. Foxy, do you have any favourite books or podcasts or people you like to follow in terms of personal development and confidence?
Yeah, I love listening to Wayne Dyer, Eckhart Tolle, and lately it's been Esther and Jerry Hicks.
Yeah.
But when I first started, there was a book that really boosted my belief in myself, and it's called The Magic of Believing by Claude Bristol. It's an old book. It's probably not one that is around, like it is still around, but it was just reading like a paragraph of that a day was enough. Yeah.
Great. I think definitely got theme going because Wayne Dyer seems to be recommended every single week. So for the regular listeners, that's definitely one to check out. And what about you, Sherri? What do you turn to for inspiration?
I've got a podcast that I subscribe to called Mind Valley. So it has lots of different people and different topics. So I love that one. My favorite book, though, I'm an audiobook sort of girl because I would have it in my helmet or driving. And when I have my depressing times, when I'm a little bit lost, my favorite book is called The Power of I Am, and it's Christian based. But it's about putting back in your head the things that you forget, like I am powerful, I am confident. And those sort of things roll around while he's reading it out loud. You say it to yourself and
I am is probably the strongest statement there is. Like, I am enough. That's what I like to remember. I am enough. So, Foxy, how do you help people build their confidence? That's what you do.
How I help people is I take them on a journey through role play. So I've created what I call the 9 archetypes of your inner power, and I get them to step into these different aspects or different roles that's in them anyway, and help them explore what's inside of them through this role. The role gives them permission to step into this part of themselves that they perhaps wouldn't normally do that. That in itself is very empowering.
Yeah. And what about you, Sherri? Even if it's not on work, if it's in day-to-day life, how do you help people around you build their confidence?
I get asked a lot, and it's the same thing we've already talked about. Like, how do you making a plan? One of the biggest things that I think is that the baby steps are the number one key. And the second step is to have a deadline to whatever it is you need to do or want to do. So, baby steps and deadlines.
Great tips. So, Foxy, what advice would you give to someone wanting to build their confidence that maybe is shy like you used to be?
Do it. Just follow that inner prompting. If there's something that you want to do, like it could be just playing the guitar or just going for a walk or whatever it is, the more you say yes to yourself, the more confidence and the more belief that you have in yourself. It's when you're saying no to yourself that you really dampen your spirit. So your spirit becomes more alive when you honor that voice and saying, oh, I might want to go and ride a motorbike, whatever it is.
And Sherri, I guess you've just answered that already in the last one. Baby steps and deadlines. So, Foxy, where can people find you or connect with you if they want to learn more about your coaching?
So they can find me on Facebook, Foxy the Empowerment Sage. I have a page there. You can also find me through a website called lovelifematters.com.au.
That's a great name. I love that. And what about you, Sherri, if people want to connect with you and learn more about your journey?
I'm just on Facebook.
That's fine.
I know, it's Sherri Jo Wilkins, and just search on Facebook. I do have something I'm working on, and it's starting to come together as far as a new website, but it's not ready yet, so Facebook will do for now.
That's fine. Nothing wrong with Facebook. So, Foxy, what's the best advice you've been given or your favorite quote to live by?
Well, I love the quote by, is it Einstein? If you are doing something, the sign of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So, and sometimes I do that. I keep trying to do the same thing. And then I wake up to myself.
Yeah, no, that's a great quote. And what about you, Sherri?
Helen Keller, life is a daring adventure or it is nothing at all.
That's a great one. I don't think I've heard that one from her before. That's great. I love that. So before we go, Foxy, have you got any final words of wisdom or anything you want to share with people before we go?
So the final word I would say is to listen to that inner voice.
Yeah.
Say yes to yourself.
Yeah. And what about you, Sherri?
Yeah, I would agree with that, because, if you don't say yes and allow yourself to take a baby step, then you haven't lost or gained anything. So say yes and take a baby step.
Yeah. And I was listening to something over the weekend that was talking about failure, and it's so true that if you don't start, you've already failed. So
correct. Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us this morning. I hope you both have a wonderful day, and I hope everyone that's listening has taken something away, learned something new, and hope everyone has a great rest of your day, rest of your week, and we'll see you all next time. So thanks, everyone, and see you next time.
Thanks,
Bronte.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.